Hey GK, where do we want text conversations in state chat?
It'd probably be better, yeah.
Okay,
And
it's
we
just
have that
locked
in the
yet.
room thing. We have that in the room, but it sucks. So
Yeah. State chat's locked yet. If you want to unlock it.
nah, leave it alone. Don't want nobody talking. One sec. Oh, looks like somebody got it just before me. Can you try now? Thank you. Oh, that's Shadow.
7 minutes in. Pastor, I think you called this one.
GM, do we have like an official moderator or someone who's going to be leading this conversation? Should we just let it be more of a free-flowing open discussion? What do you think the best way to handle this conversation would be?
You do a good job of the ops, but if you want to moderate.
Yeah, I would suggest the same thing.
Cool. Happy to do my best reffing here. I'd like to keep it open and clean, and let's maybe refrain from any personal attacks, and I'll try not to make any sort of Oscar music things, but if I do find that someone's hogging the stage and not allowing other folks to respond or engage in the conversation, I'll ask you to wrap it up so other people can engage as well. I'm not sure if we'd rather start with a kind of engagement around the differences between the proposal up for vote and the proposal that's currently in the forum. I'm not sure there's been so much going on in here. I'm not sure where the best place to start the conversation and catch everyone up would be. Any suggestions from either maybe DeFi or Pasta?
Yeah, that's probably useful for context. I can't be sure that everyone here has had a chance to take a look over both the proposal that's currently on Snapshot and the one that's in the forum. So it's probably useful, just to give a quick summary of what the intent and high-level overview of the details of each proposal are, and then we can go from there with any questions.
Sweet, I love that. DeFi, since yours is already kind of in the voting stage, would you like to do a little outline first?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the comments kind of described it pretty well, that this was an attempt to formalize what many were already, the kind of definition that many were already operating under, but had just never been explicitly defined. I think I said this on the previous governance call last week, that it's a very minimal representation. It basically has the minimum level of authority and autonomy and roles and responsibilities that need to be defined, and any kind of edge cases from there can go to governance. So like I said, it's an attempt to keep it as simple and minimal as possible. And then I think Passes basically just expands upon it, but I'll let him outline the differences.
Yeah, so the proposal that I put up attempts to address some of the concerns about the sweeping levels of authority and autonomy that are explicitly granted to workstream leaders by SCP 92. Specifically, there was some concern about inadequate checks and balances to what is defined as open-ended authority with relation to both budgetary discretion and resourcing decisions. And so the modification that I've put up grants workstream leaders by default the same level of authority and autonomy that SCP-92 does, and so should not impose any undue administrative burden on workstream leaders in the spirit of allowing them to work quickly, but does contain 3 or so additional mechanisms that attempt to handle corner cases that may arise when workstream leaders are at odds with the intent of the DAO. So there's a provision that allows, called a vote of no confidence, that allows for workstream contributors to alert the DAO that something is wrong inside the workstream. That attempts to solve the context problem, wherein it's difficult to remove a workstream leader effectively if you have no idea or aren't sure about what the motivation for removing that workstream leader might be. workstream contributors on that on the same workstream as the workstream leader whose judgment has been questioned obviously have the most context on that. So this provides a mechanism where workstream contributors can bring issues on any particular workstream to the attention of the community. Another is a mechanism that allows for decisions that a workstream leader has made that may not necessarily be widely believed to be in the best interest of the DAO to be questioned with no fault, being attributed to the workstream leader in the process. But this is an attempt to give a mechanism that allows for an intermediate step between taking no action at all to course correct a workstream strategy and removing the workstream leader entirely. There's a big gray area where damage, and I use damage in the lightest sense, but damage can be done to the DAO through suboptimal decision making. But the damage that might be done to the DAO through making that decision could be considerably less than the damage done to the DAO by removing the workstream leader entirely. I didn't feel that it was appropriate or necessarily. The act of removing a workstream leader seems to be a bit low resolution. So that's another corrective mechanism that's in place in the updated workstream leader definition. So in sum total or in summary, it is an extension of SCP-92 that does not restrict the authority or autonomy by default granted to workstream leaders, but has a couple of corrective mechanisms in place, and those should only be used in very rare cases.
I guess
think
at this
if you
point,
have any questions, we can go from there.
yeah, maybe the best point is to maybe open up the floor right now to burning questions from the community at first. We can kind of do that throughout the call though as well.
So I have it's kind of a higher level question, but in general, for both of you who have produced these proposals, what is it that we're protecting ourselves from with this proposal in general? What problem are we solving? And I know this is a very high level question. I've read through both of the proposals. I appreciate the effort on both sides. But I'm just wondering, if you were to answer yourself, what problem are we trying to solve that is such a high priority at this point where we need these definitions?
I'll go first because SCP-92 went up first, I guess. There was a set of assumptions that some or many were operating under, but they'd never been explicitly defined. So this proposal was an attempt to basically explicitly define those. The problem that it solves is that ambiguity in governance and operation is not desirable, and basically codifying that definition that some were operating under seems useful, basically. That was the motivation there to basically, there were some materials previously that like Willie had put together on the governance process, like diagrams, but the diagrams never really explicitly defined this stuff. So this just puts it in writing. Less ambiguity is better for a governance process, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that statement of the problem. Specifically, the ambiguity is around the level of authority that workstream leaders have by definition of the role. And the second proposal, the updated workstream leader definition, seeks to impose some measures that deal with that are intended to deal with concerns arising about completely open-ended authority and autonomy being granted to workstream leaders by SCP-92. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So basically, first version, at least in your opinion, Pastigos, was one step, but it wasn't specific enough to like rein in and put some like bumpers on what the workstream leader can and can't do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So I feel like one of the main points. Sorry.
go ahead, Tyler.
Mike. I feel like one of the main points of contention, or sorry if I'm like paraphrasing a lot of the forum conversations, has been about the discretion for a work stream to be able to hire and fire based on their budgets. I don't know if that's that is sorry. I'm not sure if that's something worth defining the differences there. If that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Both proposed workstream leader definitions allow workstream leaders to make arbitrary resourcing decisions. So the updated definition does not impede SCP 92's grant of the authority to hire and fire at will. The updated workstream leader definition does, however, provide a mechanism where if any hiring and firing decision made by a workstream leader is contested by at least 50% of that workstream, then they have the opportunity to appeal that decision via government. From defining the expedited governance process first, voting on that, and then voting on this immediately after.
I have a question about the declaration of no confidence. So in the case that the workstream leader is removed, the existing workstream members can appoint a new workstream leader without a community vote?
That should go to community vote. Yeah, the community has to approve the new workstream leader. They have the option to select a workstream leader internally and present that to the community for approval. But should that not be done, they can. Should they not be able to come up with a consensus opinion on a new nominee for workstream leader, they can present to the community a list, and the community can select from the list.
Can't people from the community also choose to put themselves up for the position, even if they're not on the current work stream?
That hasn't been written into the update, but I don't see any reason why not. I mean, as the updated workstream leader definition is written, right? There's nothing to stop any interested party from the community from contacting the workstream and saying, "Hey, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for the now vacant position." But if you would prefer that that's something that's formalized and written into the updated workstream leader definition, that can absolutely be done.
I guess I just feel like it's putting a lot of detail around something that kind of already exists, which is like whoever is running for workstream leader puts up a forum post explaining why, and then the community votes on it. Like it seems like very simple, and this adds a lot of detail to that. And I don't know. I feel like it could get really confusing, and I don't know. I just struggle with, like, we already have a lot of parts of governance that people struggle with, like how long things are supposed to be here, when they're supposed to move things there. And this adds so many levels of complexity. Like I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm wondering if there's a way that this could be even simplified a bit more, just so that things don't get lost in translation. I don't know. It reads really complex, and I feel like it keeps getting more complex.
It's entirely possible, and that's a valid concern. What I would ask is, what happens now if a workstream leader is removed? What is the process for continuing on with the workstream?
Well, I think, go ahead.
I mean, my assumption right now is that if there was a governance post to remove a workstream leader, that I would expect that governance post to also detail what if the workstream leader was voted to be removed, what happens, basically, whether it's someone's appointed interim workstream leader, whether there's a new vote, whether someone does, like that would be expected to be in the governance post.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is just that there's no standard procedure. And I was trying to, in the event that a workstream leader is removed by one of the mechanisms outlined in the updated proposal, provide a procedure, provide a definition of a procedure that should take place subsequently. Because right now there might be plausibly, right, contention around whether the newly elected workstream leader should come from inside the workstream or should be appointed by the community from outside the workstream.
Any contention there would be resolved by the governance process, though, by a vote.
Sure. I mean, there's a way to resolve all of these things, but I'm trying to provide, definitions that include streamlined mechanisms for getting this stuff done quickly and getting this stuff done in a way that's understood by all. The intent is to resolve ambiguity around the governance process, and so that's the reason that the update has so much detail.
So personally, I've already put a lot of my thoughts on both these proposals in the forum. And Pasta, on your proposal, there are parts of it that I agree with and parts of it that I am still unsure about. Mm-hmm. And if it was all packaged together today, I honestly would not vote for it. The no confidence piece, which was something I actually originally suggested in the other forum post, that's something I would support, although I personally do think the threshold should be higher than 50. And I do think we need to have a detailed process. We need to have that defined on, does that get kicked immediately to snapshot? If so, how long is the vote? Just things like that. But that one I could see being a useful check. But some of these other ones, in particular, the one to basically more or less appeal a firing decision of a workstream leader, and the one to, I guess, question whether a decision a workstream leader is in the best intent of the DAO. Those two, I think, are better resolved through governance, personally. And particularly the appeal one, well, technically this could happen today via governance. Anyone could put up a proposal and say, hey, this workstream leader fired me. I think it should be reversed, or I think it shouldn't happen. I'm not sure it's the best process to resolve such a situation. And I guess my main concern is, like, in a world where that process is undertaken, one, I think it adds some, and this isn't a huge deal because this could happen via governance too, but it adds some distraction and, additional time to deal with that situation on everyone involved. That's not the biggest deal. I think a more important problem there is that, if a workstream leader decides, if a workstream leader governance is voted in, decides to let a contributor go, and then this appeal process takes place and their authority is basically trumped that way, we're now basically forcing, in my opinion, a bad situation where someone is still on the work stream with a leader that has already expressed they don't want to be there. And that seems like it could result in a very tenuous and toxic outcome, where they're basically forced to have someone on their team that they don't want. In my opinion, I would rather see that resolved in different ways, ones that are already available via governance, such as that contributor spinning up their own work stream or a different proposal, or, if they really are onerous, then the no confidence and replacement of the workstream leader makes sense if that workstream leader is really not doing their job well. All those things make sense to me, but I don't ever really like forcing a workstream leader to work with someone they've already expressed they don't want to for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, I understand that concern completely.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions about that then. I guess one statement and then a follow-up question. Note that not every workstream contributor who is terminated has the option to appeal under that provision. That requires majority support from the team of workstream contributors. So this is in contrast to the one. I didn't pull this out of nowhere. This is actually the policy at Amazon. At Amazon, every terminated employee, at least as far as the engineering goes, I don't know about the Amazon warehouse positions and that sort of thing. Engineering policy at Amazon states that every employee who receives a termination letter is presented with three options at the time they receive the termination letter. One is to go on a performance improvement plan. Another is to accept whatever severance package is offered, if any, and depart voluntarily. And a third is to appeal. I do agree with you that despite the fact that there have been an extremely low number of firings since I started at ShapeShift, I do agree with you that this has that if every terminated contributor had the option to appeal, that has the potential to create some unnecessary distraction. So I added the stipulation that this takes majority team consensus that the either hiring or firing process was either illegitimate or not in the best interest of the DAO. And that should substantially cut down the noise for those kinds of decisions. So another thing is, imagine, you said you were worried about maybe creating a toxic interaction on one particular workstream by forcing via governance workstream leader to interact with an employee that they had said that they didn't want to, or a contributor that said they didn't want to. Conversely, do you not think that there's any danger of creating a toxic interaction on a workstream by allowing extremely controversial decisions to go through with no recourse? If the majority consensus on that workstream amongst the remaining contributors is that the hiring or firing decision was illegitimate or not in the best interest of the DAO, do you not think that that carries equal potential to create a toxic environment on that particular workstream?
I do see what you're saying there in the risk, but I don't think it's equal potential. Because I
Okay.
think that there's better resolutions already in place potentially via governance, to my point. So I think that I would rather see, so in a case, for example, where, half of a work stream is laid off, I would rather, if those contributors think that they have a lot of value still to add to the DAO, I would personally rather see them basically spin up their own work stream and pitch that to the DAO rather than more or less forcing a situation of them working with the leader. Or I would rather see them say, okay, this work stream leader is really not doing his job right, and clearly this was not the right decision for the DAO. And if that's the case, that's an egregious enough thing that perhaps we should consider removing the workstream leader or replacing them. So I think both of those are better resolutions than basically forcing parties that clearly have a fundamental disagreement with each other to work with each other.
Yeah, I understand.
That's my concern.
Okay, yeah, no, that's completely valid, and that does make sense. I guess the remaining concern I would have about that is the time that governance takes. So in the event that, I should just go ahead and disclaim this for a spirit of open collaborative conversation. None of this is being proposed specifically to address with the current situation around engineering layoffs. The engineering layoffs obviated some, to me anyway, potential improvements in the governance process. So that's what this was intended to address going forward. But none of these, this isn't, I'm not trying to push through governance, modifications to the current governance structure to address the situation at hand. So just so that's clear.
No, I get that. My concern is more just that theoretical one of just basically forcing groups of people who clearly have fundamental disagreements to work with each other, when I think at that point it would probably be more productive and healthier for them to just kind of split off. Not trying to obviously push them out of the DAO or say that those people can't still contribute. And if they still have value to give to the DAO, I would love for them to demonstrate that to the DAO and then get their own funding. And then I think ultimately that might be a better solution. And obviously we actually had a situation somewhat, not exactly the same, but, where, originally the marketing work stream and the growth work stream did split off from it because they had a fundamental disagreement. And I actually thought that was in some ways a better way to handle such a situation versus I wouldn't have wanted those contributors who had that fundamental disagreement to basically be forced to work with a work stream leader that they really were not happy with, because I think that ultimately creates more problems.
Yeah, for a group, I am 100% in agreement with you that is certainly the better option. I'm worried about, or I do have some concern about recourse for single contributors, because I do think that it is much less likely for single contributors to be able to reasonably make a case to spin up an independent work stream. In a case where there was some, let's say, below the bar disagreement between a workstream leader and a single contributor on a team.
Shouldn't they
Yeah,
be
so
able
let
to
me
put their case
let,
forward as well as like the workstream leader that they may have a grievance with? Like if it proposals should be judged on their own merit, and should that be the case if there is a particularly high performing workstream contributor, in this case of say you have one leader with authority granted by SCP-92, and then you have one contributor, and on their merits the individual contributor is either more competent or performant or any other number of factors. They should be able to articulate that and pitch themselves as more fit for the position than the workstream leader. Like it should be a meritocracy rather than a labour union.
I agree with you about the necessity for meritocratic exchange of ideas in the DAO. Practically, there's a context problem. Right? I know absolutely nothing about marketing. So I could review 20 resumes from 20 different people, and the only thing that would set them apart, might be name recognition for companies they had worked for previously. I have no context on what makes a competent person in a marketing department, and I imagine the same is true for people outside of engineering, for instance, about engineering. So
that statement generalizes to any arbitrary proposal that one's not a subject matter expert on.
That's right.
So similar,
That's right.
yeah. So like, that's kind of a inherent, not flaw, but property of the governance process that token holders have to make decisions on things that they may not be subject matter experts to
Absolutely.
do with. However, the merit of the way the proposal is written and substantiated should deal with that.
That's the motivation for the 50% majority consensus qualifiers on the additional mechanisms in the updated workstream leader definition, is to try to address the context problem.
All that does is creates a proposal, and then ultimately the same people vote on them.
Sorry, what's that?
So, like those mechanisms, all that does is expedite the creation of a snapshot proposal, and by definition, I mean it goes past the ideation stage where a lot of that, where a contentious idea can be debated at length. So, like one could argue that the community is up for a less informed vote than the case of if it followed the standard process, and like you said, this would only happen in very corner case circumstances as well, and the more kind of outlying an issue is, the more as a community member, I would prefer if something was discussed openly rather than rushed to a vote.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from about that. I don't think that in the cases where these mechanisms are intended to be used, any discussion about it or extended discussion about it would be very useful. Now, this doesn't mean that going directly to snapshot is the only way to expedite governance, right? We could shorten the ideation time so that there's still room for forum discussion. We could, while eliminating the forum post stage altogether. There are many ways that this could go. We could extend the snapshot voting time so that there's room to discuss this as the vote is taking place. There are many ways to expedite governance. The intent is just to be able to resolve these issues on a time span that's quicker than 11 days.
So one thing I want to add that just I think colors my perspective, and I'm sure this isn't everyone's perspective at the DAO, but just I think one of the things that from Amazon, which is a DAO, and that kind of thing, always viewed the DAO in various work streams.
I just kick them rather than serve a mute. So
the analogy that I like to use, at least for how I act in group, that the DAO has missions or support or whatever. And maybe you're building a house. Assume the DAO, whoever's building the house, let's assume that's the token holder. And basically infecting groups, each one led by a workstream leader who's kind of in charge of the leader of that contracting group. And if I feel like I don't necessarily want to micromanage their decision to fire someone under their purview because they or they just think it's the right thing to do for what to your point, Pasta. I'm expecting, because they're supposed to be responsible for that person in that group, should have been fired. Because to me, I'm generally trusting that person, and if I feel like they're not delivering, where I do think that context problem policies of a centralized company and more.
I understand that completely. I'll say two things in response. Oversee the design and installation after hours while the contractor is not up to code. Would you still, in the decisions made by the plumbing contractor that you had with sufficient context to know what it is that they're doing,
to force that contractor to not cut those people?
Separate. I'm talking about a separate mechanism, not determination of organizational impact mechanism.
A good reason to remove leader is not effectuating the goals that
or more efficacious in that case to hire a lot of productivity loss in the process, or just fix the mistake. Right.
I don't think that if it's a signal to me that it does need to be entirely replaced, is clearly not qualified. The problem is even possible because if the leadership is wrong.
That you could put in this is what if the market does not really hold something that I look to address a little bit possibility in the short term by making these decisions forward and in the future.
I think those are concerns, but actions against the version of the definite point. If a workstream's not performed, already handles that well, I think. So I think if contribute and add value, then in the way that's like the previous workstream leader wasn't a leader. But all of those are already possible with our. That was again kind of the intended definition at the beginning in all of these examples. To I much prefer the methods of either replacing that.
I understand where you're coming from, and I completely understand that point of view. That I just remembered that I thought was in the community in majority that any DAO contributor, there is no stipulation that mandates the workstream leader whose decision has been challenged to abide by the community consensus about what that decision should have been. So workstream leaders, under the authority granted under SCP 92, can very well just say, no, I don't want to do that. And it may be the case that removing that workstream leader would ultimately be more harmful than the decision itself, while the decision itself does carry, some risk of palpable damage. So the concern I have about, that I've stated before, but Willie, I think you just jumped on the call recently. The concern that I have about that being the only mechanism is that it seems too blunt tool to use effectively. It's like prescribing lobotomy to treat anxiety. Sure, the lobotomy is going to be effective, but there's quite a lot more damage done by that procedure than maybe was done by the original condition it was prescribed to treat. So. I think the community is going to be, in many cases, or could be in many cases, stuck between two bad decisions unnecessarily, or two harmful decisions rather unnecessarily. That mechanism in particular addresses another overarching concern that I and others have had recently, and that is about from my perception anyway, decreasing involvement of the community in the operations of the workstream. Sorry, the operations of the DAO via the workstreams. So under SCP 92, workstream leaders have unilateral authority over all decision-making processes under their purview, and unilateral authority over budgetary decisions. I am a little bit uneasy about the support of fungibility of the budget items and reluctance to hold accountable the workstream leaders to the agreements they've made in workstream proposals around the budget. So what can very well happen now, or is completely allowable under SCP 92, is for the community to approve a budget of a certain amount. That budget to be spent in a way that's completely different than what the community expected. And the only option they're presented is to remove the workstream leader or accept that the workstream leaders not accountable to the agreements that may have rallied support for the proposal in the first place. I'm concerned that effectively the situation that's created by unchecked authority and lack of community input in the operations of the DAO creates a situation where the governance token is not really a governance token. The community has input in determining in what amounts funds are released from the treasury and to what work streams, but what's actually done with those funds is not up to the community at all. And I think that from a standpoint of perception of the operation here publicly, we might be getting ourselves into a bad situation that does negatively impact the price of Fox in the long term.
So just to be clear, let's talk about like what authority workstream leaders do have currently, and with this new definition and with the definition that you propose. So right now, workstream leaders do have the ability to force motions in colony. That's a colony permission, and the intention has always been to eventually get rid of that, so that the only way to make payments is via motions. In which case, the workstream would have the ability to veto it, or anyone with reputation in that workstream. That's the same though. Right now, that was in place before DeFi's proposal, and that would still be the case even if your proposal passed. And that is a trade-off that we take, but the trade-off there is at max 1 month of budget. So a workstream leader could theoretically, under any of these definitions, run off with 1 month of a workstream's budget, or spend it in a way that doesn't really align with what the community's expectations. That is a risk. That's very real. But the new definition doesn't actually solve that. Unless we remove the permission on colony, which is something we can absolutely do once the community wants to do that. But again, it's totally irrelevant from the new definition of a workstream leader. So I just want to be clear on that part, because you're right. That is a risk that we currently have, but it's a trade-off. And the reason that we take that trade-off is because there's a lot of benefits in the community being able to delegate that authority to a workstream leader that does have their trust and is incentivized in the long run to not abuse it, because then they very likely will be replaced if they do something that doesn't align with the community's expectations. But the benefit we get from that is the ability for work streams to move quickly and nimbly, which is incredibly valuable. And if we give that up, then I think that's going to have the worst impact on Fox and the DAO, because we're not going to be able to get stuff done if every decision does require community input. So it's a trade-off that we take, and it's a trade-off we take for good reason. But to be clear, none of these definitions actually change that. The only way to change that would be to pass a proposal saying that workstream leaders do not get the permission to force payments in colony, which is the plan. But I think we're all glad that to date we have had that permission, so that workstream leaders can more quickly and effectively and easily make those payments and not have to create motions for each one.
I understand what you're saying completely. I understand the concern, but it's a different one than the concern that I was talking about just previously. Also, I would like to note, because this has come up a couple of times, the updated workstream leader definition does not impede velocity for workstream leaders at all, except in extraordinarily controversial cases, in which case the velocity of workstream leaders should be impeded. But no, it nowhere is it explicitly stated or implied that every decision has to go through governance. It's only extraordinarily controversial. This grants the community to challenge decisions that are extraordinarily controversial. The concern that I was trying to articulate before is that if this much authority with no recourse from the community, with practically no recourse very little recourse from the community, because you can't always remove a workstream leader. But again, right, that's a very blunt instrument. If this much authority is granted to workstream leaders with very little input from the community, what is the level of community's input? There's always some balance between whether this is community driven, whether this DAO is community driven or workstream leader driven. With sweeping authority with very little recourse, other than the one mechanism of removing a workstream leader entirely, granted to workstream leaders, we are stripping the authority, in my opinion, to direct the actions of the DAO from the community. And if workstream leaders are not held accountable to the agreements in the budget, then the community, even though they are presented, what am I trying to say? The option to vote via governance on whether or not to release funds from the treasury to a workstream, has no input on what that money is actually used for. So I'm concerned about the perception of the public perception of this, not the governance token not actually allowing the option for very much governance.
So I understand where you're coming from on that, Pasta, but I disagree for a few reasons. Okay. So the first is governance obviously has the authority to, governance is choosing to delegate certain responsibilities to the workstream leader. That is very much a function of governance. and that is something governance can choose not to do as well. So in my opinion, the power still remains with governance there. I think there's a secondary question here about budgets and to what degree a budget is, a promise to the community versus a plan. I always view it as a plan, and it's certainly something I use to evaluate a workstream and a workstream leader. Did the budget they proposed, are they basically sticking to that or within the spirit of it? Or are they making changes that are not within the spirit of it? That is something I would use to evaluate a workstream leader. And if they were going totally off the range to something that did not directly affect their goals, then there would be a reason there, for my opinion, the community to move to work to remove that workstream leader or replace them or take any sort of action governance deems necessary, which governance can do at any time. So I don't think governance is giving up that ability as much as governance is choosing to delegate authority to a workstream leader, specifically for the reason mentioned earlier, because the assumption is that the workstream leader will have the best context within that group and make decisions within that group. But ultimately, what governance is doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to empower this workstream leader and this group with this much money in order to deliver these goals. Like ultimately, what the promise of the workstream leader is to the community, or the workstream to the community, is those goals, in my opinion. And that's generally what I judge a workstream on. Are they delivering their goals or not? If a workstream leader sees an ability to use their proposed budget, or to use, say, half their proposed budget to accomplish those same goals or accomplish them in a better way, then I want them to do that. I don't want them to feel like they're stuck because they put a line item of a certain thing, so now they have to spend it in that way. I would rather them use the budget in the best interest of the DAO to their best of their ability, and realize that they're going to be evaluated on that by governance. So in my opinion, governance is not giving up any power. Governance is choosing to delegate it in these specific cases of workstreams and workstream leaders, but it always retains the ability to change that at any time. Governance can always come in and squash a workstream entirely, change a leader. They can pass a governance proposal, dictating to the workstream that their goals need to change, or that spend needs to happen in a certain way that they're not doing in a certain way. So I don't think governance is actually giving up any power. It's just choosing to delegate it for operational reasons.
I agree with that. And one of the really important point on top of that is that I don't think the updated definition would change that whatsoever. If the idea is that, after a workstream leader takes action to, let's say, allocate funds and over 50% of the workstream disagrees with it, at that point, those funds are already allocated. And again, like the best thing to do in that situation would probably be to either replace the workstream leader. You can't really force an action to bring those funds back. That's just not something that the DAO can do under either of those definitions. So that's the main point. I agree with John's point there about the benefits of having this, and that the community is not giving up power. They're just delegating authority, which has benefits. But also the updated definition, how do you think it would actually solve that scenario?
This isn't just about the inappropriate use of funds. This is about any strategic decision that workstream leader might choose to make that has commonly regarded as undesirable side effects on the rest of the DAO. So I'll give you an example. Let's say product decided tomorrow that we were going to pivot, and this was going to be ShapeShift was going to become an NFT auction platform with no input from the community. We say, hey, CryptoPunks and Bored Apes are really cheap right now, in comparison to where they were earlier, in comparison to the sales prices earlier in the year. So we're going to buy several using treasury funds. We're going to pivot the engineering effort through our direction. We're going to list these. You make a proposal to buy the NFTs, and we're going to list these as the first items for sale. We're going to make a mint, and the entire community is like, absolutely not. That is a bad idea.
I understand that scenario, but let's be real about what the DAO can and can't control. There's no smart contract. There's nothing that the DAO actually physically can do to control the roadmap. What the DAO and the token holders can do is decide how to allocate funds. They could either allocate funds directly to individuals. We already agreed that that's not a very effective way to get stuff done. Or they can allocate funds to work streams to achieve the goals that the work streams promise. And again, if the work streams are heavily incentivized to fulfill the goals that they commit to the community, and if they don't, then it doesn't matter if 50% of the work stream disagrees. Certainly that can be a great signal to the community for how they should vote. But ultimately, again, anyone can make a proposal to replace that work stream and stop allocating funds to that work stream, which ultimately that is what the DAO can control. And again, the updated definition doesn't actually improve that process at all, in my opinion. It just makes it more complicated.
Well, you said there's no way to control the roadmap. Under the updated definition, there's no way to control the roadmap now. I agree with you entirely. And there's no way to control the roadmap under SCP 92. With the updated definition, there would be a way to control the roadmap, right? In cases where there was appropriate justification to invoke the motion, and the
by allocating funds, though. That's the only way. I mean, there's no way that token holders can actually just update the roadmap, basically, and then it just gets done, right? Like, it needs to get done by contributors, and the way that happens is by allocating funds to them.
But what I mean is the roadmap is updated by community consensus, right? The decision is made or not made by community consensus. I mean, this has to be a challenge to a decision, right? So the decision is reversed, which means the roadmap doesn't change direction in this case. This doesn't allow a mechanism for decisions that haven't been considered to be forced by the community. But if such a decision is made to make a drastic change to the roadmap, the community can oppose that decision by this mechanism. So nothing. What am I trying to say? The community is not forcing product under the hypothetical example I gave to do anything. They are demanding that product not do a thing they've stated they like to do.
So again, all the community really can do is allocate funds from the treasury, or they can execute transactions. So let's say to change parameters or to execute transactions on other smart contracts that the DAO has permission to modify. That is all the DAO can do.
I think I see what you're saying. You're saying there's no practical way to make the product workstream leader under this case, even by invoking the new mechanism, comply with the. Yeah. Okay. So that's right. Under the current model, let's say the proposal did go up. Under the current model, it's exactly the same, right? Let's say the proposal did go up. The community said, product, we don't want you to make that decision. Wooly and Diggy, you said, we've got the money. You guys can stick it. What is the community to do in this case? They can put up a proposal calling for the ousting of the product workstream leader. Right? But this entire process takes 2 complete governance cycles as it stands, which is like 22 days. Under the updated workstream leader definition, the same process would take place, but you can do this in as little as 6 days.
So the current process, to be clear, it's 11 days minimum to go through.
11 days per proposal. This would require 2 proposals.
So maybe what I'm hearing now is that we might want to modify the governance process so that if there is a situation, or the proposal here is that if there is a situation where the community disagrees with the workstream leader and wants to take action, which is, again, replacing the workstream leader or even revoking funding, the remaining funding from that entire workstream, maybe we want a shorter governance cycle for it. That's an argument that can be made, but again, that would be a 2 lines update in our governance process if we wanted to make that change. And there's trade-offs again of having a change like that goes really quickly through governance, and people don't necessarily have time to get context and weigh in. That's very different than the updated definition. And if that's what we want to discuss, then we can discuss that. But again, I think the existing process does cover that well without requiring, for example, 50% of the workstream members to object. That's adding additional restrictions and stuff. And ultimately, any community member can make that proposal, and it would certainly be have a higher likelihood of passing, I think, if it did have support from a significant percentage of that existing work stream.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, we're in agreement. We're in agreement on some of this. I think the part where we disagree is whether or not the additional benefits afforded are worth the increase in complexity for the governance policy. Is that right?
Yeah, well, so it sounds like maybe what I'm hearing now is that the only change that we might want to put into effect, or that we would be to have another option for an accelerated governance process in the event that there's a proposal to modify a work stream, basically, and we could be clear on what the changes that would qualify for this expedited process would be. Is there anything else though any other changes?
Yeah, so I think that is useful. I do still think that the how did you phrase it just a minute or so ago? You said, support from the workstream contributors with proper context would give a proposal introduced a higher likelihood of passing. I do think that the gravitas associated with the invocation of these mechanisms is useful. Now, you and I, might disagree on whether or not that's true, or to what degree they're useful, or whether or not that usefulness justifies the increase in governance complexity. But that is another consideration, right? If I heard that on some other work stream, right, no confidence motion had been introduced, I would know exactly what that meant. That meant that 50% of the people on the team think the workstream leader is fundamentally incompetent. That's a big deal. Likewise, if I heard from another workstream that an assessment of organizational impact had been requested for a decision, this could be done either by 50% of workstream contributors or any workstream leader. Right? I would immediately know what that means, and that is also a big deal. Either some workstream leader has said, hey, that's a bad decision that either strongly negatively impacts my workstream or the DAO as a whole. I would like this to go into review. Or a group of subject matter experts on the workstream has said, hey, we think this is a bad idea and might have negative side effects. We tried to work this out on the workstream internally, but we can't convince the workstream leader that this is a bad idea. We'd like to go into review. That comes across much differently than does any individual contributor putting up a proposal.
Okay.
And I think
I hear the logic there. I'm not sure if I agree that it's worth it, like adding additional language and stuff to the governance process. It's only effective if people actually understand that, like what this no confidence vote means, and if they've done the reading to understand that, or eventually do the reading. And again, I do think that if a proposal came up to modify it, it would be a serious proposal, and if it had support from any members of that existing work stream, then that would be important context for the community to have. But I don't think that we need special processes for that. I think I generally lean towards keeping our governance process as simple as we can, unless there's a compelling reason to update it. And this, I just don't think it's compelling, because you can still have the exact same effect without having some extra special process and stuff, which then also, what if we're in a situation where only 40% of the workstream disagrees and stuff, like now they can't go through that no confidence process and stuff. I'm not convinced that those would be worthwhile changes to make, and just lean towards keeping things simpler. Because again, our existing governance process can cover all of that. We can still put up a no confidence proposal with support from many of the workstream members without any special process.
I think so long as we have some sort of expedited governance process, that does satisfy a significant portion of the concern. Because, the example I gave earlier, right, where two subsequent, like a decision that's made by a workstream leader is challenged by the community, that workstream leader does not comply, and then the workstream leader has to be removed, right? That process requires 2 governance proposals and a minimum of 22 days. That's a lot of distraction, and that does not allow the DAO to move quickly and adapt as an organization. So, to accommodate for those cases, if we've got some kind of expedited governance process, I do think you're right that anybody can put up a proposal, and there's nothing to stop a number of workstream contributors, right, with the relevant subject matter expertise and context, from writing in either in the comments of the forum post or in the proposal itself, right, that they believe. What's that?
Hot mic, don't worry.
Please do. There's nothing to stop them from pledging their support in the proposal. So if a concerned group of workstream contributors, or a single workstream contributor with strong concerns, exercises that strategy, and by that strategy I mean pasting pledges of support, right, in the proposal directly, and we do have an expedited governance process, then functionally that's equivalent to what's being proposed in the updated workstream leader definition, and that requires minimal changes to the governance.
Awesome. I appreciate you being open to that, because I think we're definitely getting pretty aligned here, and and hopefully can still figure out what's best for the DAO and stuff with minimal changes. I would definitely be more open to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts on kind of like the idea of this expedited process, if that's what we're discussing now. But also, I want to get clarity on one thing. So you mentioned it would require 2 proposals. What is I'm under the assumption that we could probably do anything we wanted to do in 1 proposal. Why are you thinking it might take 2 proposals to and then 22 days as opposed to 11 days?
Yeah, so this is for a decision challenge that a workstream leader decides not to comply with. The community, anybody from the community right now can put up a proposal opposing a decision. And if the community votes in favor, a decision made by a workstream leader, if the community votes in favor of that decision being overturned, the workstream leader is in no way obligated by policy by our current policy to comply with the outcome of that vote. They can say, no, I'm sticking to my guns. I know this is the right thing to do. So, I appreciate the input, but no, thank you. If the community was sufficiently aggrieved, they would then move to try to remove the workstream leader, but that requires 2 proposals.
Okay, maybe we could do it. I think we could do it in one proposal where it's like, and this might even be more effective, where it's like the community is basically saying, workstream leader, we are expressing our desire for you to not take this action or to take this action. And if you don't, then we would like to remove you basically as workstream leader by X date or something if you don't take action. Do you agree that could basically accomplish the same with one single proposal?
Yes, if we're fine putting that into a single proposal, then yes. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see if there's any reason why we can't. I just.
That should work, and I think that's good because really that is what the community can control, right? They can't necessarily like force a workstream leader's hands unless it's a transaction that the DAO can't execute, but they can basically make it very clear that to a workstream and a workstream leader that this is the action they want, and if the workstream leader doesn't take it, then they've lost confidence in that workstream leader and want to remove them from their position.
I have one more concern that I'm going to get some feedback on before moving on to the expedited governance topic. The concern is about with workstream leaders having unilateral authority over resourcing and budgetary decisions that affect resourcing. The perception of stability that is advertised to potential contributors and how that affects our ability to both attract and retain talent. On the engineering workstream, as an example, I don't know how it's been for other work streams. It's been extremely difficult it's been difficult. It was difficult to retain talent through the decentralization process. It's been extremely difficult to attract new talent, and that stands to reason. There are lots of very high-paying software engineering jobs that can, frankly, provide competent engineers more than we can. So we have to make the value proposition that we give is much more long-term focused than it is short-term focused. But that doesn't necessarily, or at least our experience trying to hire from the world talent pool indicates that that's not necessarily in alignment with the priorities of qualified applicants. So if we openly present a situation, what I mean is with no kind of recourse or protection or not guarantees to stability, but with an open advertisement of potential instability, we're going to have a difficult time, and we have had a difficult time. This isn't just speculative. Convincing qualified potential contributors to choose to come work with us instead of taking jobs that are much more stable, often and a lot of times higher paying. This isn't just a hypothetical concern. This is almost certainly a major contributing factor to the reason why it was so difficult for us to find qualified interested contributors. Back earlier in the year, when the markets were better, there were 3 open positions that we weren't able to fill.
And so how does the updated workstream leader definition help with that issue? Because that's an issue, but I think that's an issue that every project has, and that I'm not sure a solution is to basically give every engineer we hire tenure and make it so that the only way for them to be let go is.
Can I add some perspective on that? That certainly was not the case. We had candidates that we were on the fence about, for example, the technical program manager candidate. Like there was that hire or not hire decision was not a slam dunk either way, and the conditions or anything like that were not a deciding factor for that particular candidate. They were more than comfortable.
That's
Having
one person.
Yeah, it's more data than like you're claiming to the contrary.
No,
We never had
absolutely
that.
not.
We never had
Absolutely
that
not.
as an explicit objection
Absolutely
or
not.
implicit.
Hold on. Wait, sorry,
And
I'll let you finish.
yeah, and I am kind of like to Willie's point. Yeah, this adds kind of more protections than anyone would have under a kind of regular employment agreement, at least for like the mainland US.
Okay.
Excluding Montana.
That you're talking about the motivations for one particular applicant. The number of possible candidates from the technical program manager space is certainly larger than one. There were, as far as I know, only 2 interviews for that position ever given. The one candidate that did pass the first round of interviews, you were only on the fence about. Should this have been a more compelling value proposition to the talent pool of technical program managers, it only stands to reason that the number of them interested in coming to work with us, as opposed to going to work for other companies, would have been much larger than it was. So
that's
it's not
speculation versus like some data that we do have. The reason we didn't extend an offer to the first candidate was the risk that they were taking on personally due to like market conditions and primarily time zone considerations. It was not one that was a competency problem. There was both like demonstrated competency and culture fit for that hire. The logistics were the most concerning one in terms of like productivity and like, you know, ramping up and costs associated with them being on a different time zone and having to come over to a time zone that would be more congruent with not just engineering, but the other teams as well. So that was the first case. The second case was that perhaps the candidate interviewed badly, but many that interviewed felt that the technical competencies weren't demonstrated. I think it was collectively agreed, it was nearly unanimous that they were a cultural fit. But I just want to like state here that there is no evidence that the kind of protections or lack thereof under the non-existent agreement were a deciding factor that it or had a negative impact on candidates' decision-making process. Indeed, to the contrary, the arrangements that we have with some of the community contributors are like much looser and have afforded them flexibilities, namely like Stacked Q, for example, had some personal issues where he was unable to work, and it was always an agreed like estimate with rates, and that arrangement has afforded them flexibility to be able to come and go as they please. Similarly, another one of the contributors, CH Cash, Making, both those guys have done extensive amounts of work for us on a very flexible basis, and we've got an operational agreement with them that didn't need to be decided by governance because the workstream leader had discretion over that bounty fund budget and how that's allocated. Processes that have developed with operations, with it was originally Ocean, and then Ocean and myself, and then Tyler, and now there's operation team members that are helping to administer that program, and it's working very smoothly. Any of those hiring decisions have also been run by like engineering. We never felt like collectively as a team that we wanted to hire or were in a position to hire those candidates on as full time. So like the mechanism is working there. So I just want to clear up that there's speculation that, or it could be reasoned with, in your words, that that could be a deciding factor. I just want to like put it out there clearly that has never explicitly been the case for a candidate.
So there are 2 things that I want to address. One, the contributors that you named, none of them are full-time candidates. All of those participate in the bounty program. 2, what I want to, then this is the stronger one. I'm not the first person to articulate these concerns about the uncertainty around this role and inherent risk associated, or uncertainty around the roles we're offering and inherent risks associated with them, potentially being, or very likely being a hindering factor to our ability to hire. In fact, it was you. So that's why I'm repeating this. It was you and Josh. You both articulated these concerns publicly, and that was the motivation for the salary increases, the total compensation increases between the first and second iterations of the engineering workstream. So to say that that's not a substantial concern now, I don't think is entirely justifiable, because it has also been articulated publicly that the hiring funnel is very narrow at the bottom. There are some number of applicants. So it's not a matter of what am I trying to say? Visibility of the positions that is hindering our ability to hire the qualified candidates. The overwhelming majority of the candidates who applied were not competent for the positions that were offered, and couldn't and did not even pass an initial screen. This is not the experience shared by many other companies, and the large I would say even many is not the experience shared by many other organizations in the same industry. The primary distinction between what we're doing and what they're doing is the lack of a formal employment agreement, or any provisions that a formal employment agreement might provide.
So I've heard this concern. I understand that it is a concern, but I have a very different perspective and view on this particular thing. One, I think people tend to overestimate quote unquote stability in other roles at other companies. There's almost no company in the role at least in the US, where at-will employment is pretty much a nationwide thing, that cannot. The stability, I guess, put another way, is an illusion. Almost any company can get rid of anyone they want at any time, and there might be certain provisions where they can't, but they almost always have a way around those. And the reality is, if companies need to make changes, they do. So I've always thought that whenever this comes up, people way overestimate the real stability they're getting at any other job. Two, I don't think we should sugarcoat as a DAO the fact that these positions are risky. I think we do need to do things to attract talent. Those have been some of the discussions that have taken place in the past, but we don't necessarily want someone, in my opinion, who is just looking for quote unquote stability. I mean, working on a very experimental organization that is the DAO, on very experimental stuff that is crypto, inherently is risky. And really working anywhere in crypto, even today, even though it was less so than years ago, is risky. We want to be able to attract talent, but we don't want to lie to people and tell them there's some stability that cannot actually be offered. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what's being asked for, but I just don't think the DAO can offer that stability, to be perfectly honest. And this isn't all that different from any startup, for example. When any engineer or anyone decides to go work for a startup, they're inherently taking some significant risk. Now, that risk comes with upside. And I think that's the same thing with the DAO.
I agree. It
comes with significant upside, but we shouldn't sugarcoat and say that there isn't significant risk there that is there, because I just think there is. Until the DAO is a much bigger project, until crypto itself is much farther along, that risk is always going to exist. And so I just don't know that we can provide any more stability than we already are.
I'm certainly not suggesting that we lie to contributors or advertise any stability that doesn't exist. Putting myself in the perspective of a external potential contributor that might be interested in taking a look at this project, I'd be made a lot more comfortable if I saw that there was some recourse in hiring and firing decisions, noting that I couldn't be just terminated spuriously, than I would if it was advertised to me that my employment with the company was at the sole discretion of a single person, because that is at least in perception, to some degree, different than what it is that I would expect coming to work for any other company, like ShapeShift, for instance, who had an HR department. There is always in a typically structured corporate organizational hierarchy, accountability one level up. and the CEO is accountable to the board.
Yeah, I think
Under
many people overestimate the impact of HR on such things, to be honest, Pasta.
but that's and it's fine if they do. But right, it's fine if they do. But I mean, I take Amazon for instance, right? They've got a specified, very specific advertised termination policy that does provide employees recourse to challenge decisions, and they do that on an individual basis. I don't think that it's practical for us to do that, so I didn't propose that. But that is that's attractive to people who might have had previous negative interactions with a direct report or vice versa. Or sorry, with a direct superior. I just think I would be a lot less comfortable going to work for a DAO, knowing that my employment was at the sole discretion of some random person, some random, a single random other contributor at the DAO. We have not had good hiring success, and correlation doesn't equal causation, but these two things are almost certainly correlated.
Well, so let's be fair, because I think if we compare it to a traditional organization, at almost all traditional organizations, your employment is subject to your manager's discretion. But in the DAO, it actually, you have more power, because even if a workstream leader does decide to stop allocating funds, which again, if anyone is concerned about that risk, then maybe they shouldn't come work for the DAO, or really for any organization that doesn't offer tenure. But again, they actually have more power, because they can always propose anything that they want to the community. And if they think that the workstream leader is making a mistake and letting them go, then they're actually empowered to go directly to the token holders to appeal that decision, which is already more power than most traditional orgs have. And I would not be in favor of basically, I'm not sure what a better option is, other than giving the community the ability to delegate that authority to a reputable workstream leader that has earned their trust.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Just that governance, and I think we've even seen this over the last few weeks in these various discussions, that governance is far greater recourse than any company really ever gives. And no one can be really removed from the DAO. If you have tokens, you're part of the DAO, you can engage in discussion, you can propose whatever you want. That is the recourse, in my opinion, and that is far stronger than what many companies allow. And even companies with quote unquote HR departments, the reality is HR departments are not there to help or protect employees. They're there to protect the company.
Right. Yeah, I know.
And they often, and I've seen this in many centralized orgs that I've been in, where employees get this perception that HR is there to help them. And it's one of the reasons I've always personally been, or I've always had problems with HR departments traditionally in companies, is that it's kind of, I don't know what the word is, but it's kind of deceiving. And that HR departments will portray themselves that way to some degree, but in reality, their only real mission is to protect the company and to do things to protect the company. And if a manager wants to fire, usually it's HR's job to figure out a way to do that. It's not their job to tell them they can't, or to protect the employee in any way.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think we've got an equal concern. We don't have an HR department. What if, for instance, right, the new workstream is spun up, some highly disagreeable person is put at the helm of that workstream. There's quite a lot of public, what am I trying to say? There's a lot of negative interaction between, the workstream's longstanding, let's say they're high performing. There's a lot of negative interaction between the contributors on that workstream and the workstream leader that's in place, right? Hiring and firing decisions are made spuriously. There's no oversight, there's no accountability. Those workstream leaders go out into the space and accuse ShapeShift of practicing discriminatory employment practices or something like this. There's quite a lot of reputational damage that can be done if we don't have a mechanism to deal with contentious on workstream interactions properly. And I don't think, realistically, I don't think it's practical for a single workstream contributor without much tenure and notoriety to put up a convincing proposal to challenge a hiring and firing decision made by a workstream leader. So I think the traditional companies are at risk of legal exposure for interactions like this. But in this space, I think there's a risk of reputational damage that we haven't considered the tooling to try to manage properly.
I'll jump in real quick, and I know that this is kind of getting pulled into one direction here. One part I think that I'm missing from this conversation, and this could be something just myself, is that, you know, there's a lot of talk of, either, one case or the other. If a workstream leader does something that nobody likes, the community, workstream itself, whatever, the option is just vote them out, get rid of them, fire them, whatever. I think a big piece of this that we're kind of glazing over or skipping over is providing those workstream leaders with the tools and added resources to help them be workstream leaders better. And we're just basically saying, well, if they do something wrong, recourse, get rid of them. Instead of offer, give them options, give them the ability to make a decision, an informed decision, versus just what information they might have pulled from their experience previously. Not everyone doesn't have all the ability. You can be a manager for freaking 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, 5 months. Doesn't make you like totally qualified and knowledgeable in all the decisions that you make and the impact and the recourse and all the different things that come from that. And I think that as a DAO, we should look at, and I know I've been saying this a lot, providing the tools and the resource for these workstream leaders to help better solve problems, become better problem solvers. And I'm not saying they're not good problem solvers. I'm just saying just give them added tools so that when they come up with one solution, they could go and compare it to another solution, or they can go and say, you know what, this is one option, this is another option, versus this is the option I have, and this is what I have to go forward. I'm a little, as a community member, a little concerned that this is the conversation that I constantly see and hear, is that, if someone does something we disagree with, we vote them out. We go to governance, we get rid of them, we do this. We don't give them the tools to help them become better. We're just basically saying, you failed, you're done, that's your one shot.
So I got to hop off to another call, so I want to just respond quickly because I hear your point, never was. But again, I mean, I think the reason that the conversation's going to this area is that that's what token holders can control. Really, I want to be very clear about what token holders can and can't do, especially as we move towards complete decentralization, where really token holders control this smart contract on chain, and that is their power. And their power is to, again, allocate resources or not allocate resources, and control smart contracts that the DAO has permission over. So there's nothing, I mean, I'm all for giving workstream leaders more tools and resources to be effective. And we can do that now. It doesn't require any changes to our governance process. So I think the reason that we're going back towards what the community's recourse is because that very realistically is what the community's options are. The community, again, does not really have the ability to force a workstream leader to actually take a specific action outside of what the DAO can control with its smart contract. So I'm all for giving these workstream leaders more resources and tools, but that's not something that token holders can actually affect on chain. So
Willie, I know that you have to run, so I'll address your point really quickly. I don't think we have to take it all the way to the level of force, right? It's nowhere in the definition of a workstream leader that the workstream leader is obligated or expected to, or has the responsibility of upholding the will of the community and using the tools, that they have available at their purview to accomplish that mission. Right now, it's workstream leaders do whatever they think is good, or whatever they want, with an amount of money that's been approved by the community that they can spend however they want. And I don't think to get to Neverwas's point, I think is what you were saying, maybe, and correct me before I get too far into this if I'm incorrect about this. But this has been a concern of mine too, is the lack of community input, or the increasing departure between workstream leaders and the community in terms of how it is that decisions are made, or what it is that's decided to do, or what it is that workstream leaders decide to do.
I mean, that's a piece, but that's not really what I'm commenting to. I
Okay.
just think that as community members, to Willie's point too, it's our responsibility, or if we want to see this project succeed, or we want to see the community succeed, we need to be able to offer, everyone options. And this includes workstream leaders, but workstream leaders have to, be open to, to ideas and different things, and have the open-mindedness to look at things objectively and subjectively, and just take in those things. So, I mean, yeah, it could be that there might be a pulling away from this, but I'm not blaming any workstream leader, because workstream leaders are working within what tools they have. And and that's not to say that it limits them. It's just saying that you do what you know, and that's the case of any individual. And I think that having more resource to do that, whether it's having strategic people, a panel or a board, or any type of thing where it's just like, hey, I have this thought, can I bounce this off, and they're given interaction and communication. It provides a resource to where they could they can offer different options versus just like, I see this as the only way I can go because this is what I feel works, and does it work? Maybe. Does it not work? Maybe not, but this is what I got to do.
I think
Yeah, it
one thing
never
that'll be
was.
said. Sorry.
I was just going to say, to your point, like, certainly I agree that there should be, and it's a good conversation to have about how we provide further support and tools for workstream leaders to do their job. I think the examples we're talking about are extreme cases where a workstream leader does something that is so far out of disagreement with what the community wants them to do, or is egregious in a way that we do need that recourse to be able to respond and remove them as a community. That doesn't mean that should be the response to every decision that the community may or may not agree with or disagrees with here or there. I definitely agree with that, and it depends on the context and the situation. I also think that that's kind of our duty as a community to support those that we delegate authority to and to find ways to help them, whether that means funding something that gives them the tools to help, or it just means we as community members make ourselves available to bounce, to your point, bounce ideas off and give feedback to, which is something I know many in the community do, but doesn't mean we can't do it better. But I think the reason the conversation is going there is we are talking about potential, egregious edge case examples where maybe the best move is to remove them. I'm not saying that that's the only way we should address problems, but we do need that recourse in various situations.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree with you, Never Was. I think that we would do well in empowering workstream leaders with the tools to make better educated decisions and encouraging them to utilize those tools. But I think many would argue that unless you had anything fundamentally different in mind, those tools, to the best of our ability to provide them, already exist. Right? There's nothing to prevent any workstream leader from going out, from reaching out to any other member of the community and asking for assistance or support on a decision.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed with that, Postigos. I'd like to kind of bring this just back around, just as some actionable feedback for you, Pasta, since we've been going a while. So I've expressed some of my concerns on this call and in the forum, but there is, to be very clear, and I also said this in the forum, parts of your proposal that I agree with, especially around the no confidence measure. My personal opinion is that so right now the current workstream leader definition, SB 92, is on track to pass tomorrow. I think that perhaps breaking out your proposal into a couple sub-proposals that can be voted on as addendums to that definition might make sense. And I say this because, at least currently, I would vote for some version of the no confidence vote, but I might not vote for some other provisions of the definition. Okay. And I think there's space to potentially get some of these things in and maybe some not of them. But if they're proposed as one thing, then I'm going to be in a position personally where I feel like I have to vote against it because of the things I disagree with, even though there are aspects I agree with. So perhaps these should be proposed as like a few proposals that are potential addendums to the definition, and that would allow the community to weigh in on those particular items rather than everything together. But that's
I think that's a great idea. No, I think that's a great idea, because functionally this is identical to SCP 92 in terms of the authority granted. So with a couple of measures tacked on. So yeah, if the community has the option to vote on each of the corrective measures independently, some are taken, others are not. That'll have, in large part, the same effect as if the updated definition were passed. So
that's my thought. Is that pieces of this the community may agree with and pieces may not, and I would love to see the pieces the community does agree with at least get voted forward.
So for right now, what I'll work on first is an addendum specifying the no confidence measure, and an addendum specifying an expedited governance process.
Yeah, that makes
And
a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I'll put those up separately. And then from there, we can further discuss any additional measures that might be necessary or might be worthwhile. But I think those two, there's been at least some support for on this call, generally. One thing that I would like to discuss with everyone on the call while everyone's here is a risk that I see with SCP-92, and that's a tendency towards increased centralization of the DAO. And that has been of significant concern to me the last few weeks. I guess first I'd like to know, whether or not this is a worthwhile conversation to have, and I'll judge that by we can gauge that by whether or not anyone has shared similar concerns. If no one has shared similar concerns, then it's probably not useful to discuss this as a group here. So has anyone?
Yeah, I have for sure.
Okay. I'll use that to motivate I'll give an explanation of exactly what it is that I'm concerned about, and we'll see if that resonates with anyone, and we'll then decide whether or not it's worth continuing the conversation. What I've been concerned about, with more and more authority being granted to workstream leaders, is the creation of what looks like, in terms of stickiness, let me say, as related to the DAO, a sort of two-tiered system where not all contributors are treated on equal footing. Furthermore, with sweeping authority and autonomy granted to workstream leaders, given the one provision that we've got to take corrective action, and no mandate that workstream leaders should make decisions that are believed to be, or what am I trying to say? Maximize the effort that they put towards making decisions that they believe reasonably to be in strong alignment with the opinions of the community. This project is fundamentally run by a small group of workstream leaders and not run by the community. The community, there's some disagreement about the effectiveness of the ability to remove a workstream leader in correcting the direction of the DAO in terms of strategy and implementation of that strategy. But I really don't see it as what is allowable as a result of SCP-92. And this isn't just hypothetical. I mean, there's been quite a lot of discussion about this openly recently. I don't think the DAO really has a lot of insight into what's going on. I don't think they have a lot of ability to exercise either support or dissent for the strategic decisions that are made. And if it's a small group of workstream leaders, one of the rebuttals that I've gotten to, expressing this concern is that there is no one making hard and fast decisions about which directions the DAO is going to take. Workstream leaders only have the authority to exercise control over their individual workstreams. But if decisions are made by a small group of workstream leaders as a group, that's functionally the same thing. And if the community does not have input or insight into those decisions or conversations, then the community is effectively exercising what governance mechanisms it has without complete information, and in a way that I think has departed from the original intent when we first decentralized.
Yeah, I hear your concern. I've obviously heard some of these concerns and seen them on the forum. I do disagree in many different ways. One of the ways I disagree is just, again, those workstream leaders ultimately only serve at the whim of the DAO. So the fact that they can be removed means that if they are making decisions or making these quote unquote collective decisions that the community disagrees with, then the community, in my opinion, should replace them. I don't think that the community is ever giving up their ability to do that. Governance always retains that mechanism. And if we decide that the workstream leader paradigm is not the right one to help run the operations of the DAO on a day-to-day basis, then governance remains open to other suggestions or other ways that things can be done. To me, it's very like, if you think about it, in respect, again, this is not a perfect analogy because the DAO is different, but if you think about it in analogy to a company, companies often will have people put in place to run the operations day to day, managers of various types. But that doesn't mean that the shareholders give up their recourse. Ultimately, if they feel that the operations are not serving them, then they replace those people. And I think it's very similar in a DAO, where governance has the ultimate recourse. If they feel that the workstream leaders, anyone in particular or an entire group, are not serving the interests of the DAO correctly, then they should either be removed or not have their terms renewed. And it's certainly something I look at when I'm thinking about a renewal of a proposal. Like, when any of these workstream renewals come up, if I feel that, a certain leader, a certain workstream is either not delivering on their goals or making decisions that, I personally disagree with, then I'm going to be very likely to vote against them. So far, I haven't felt that way. I felt most workstream leaders on any given day are operating with what they believe is the best intent of the DAO. You can certainly disagree with particular decisions or decide whether or not you agree with that particular one, but I haven't seen anything where I think a workstream leader is operating in such a way that is like intentionally against the best interests of the DAO.
Okay, so that's not intentionally against the best interest of the DAO and not sufficiently well informed about the best interest of the DAO are two different things. So I would say I'm in agreement with you so far that I don't know of an example where any workstream leader in particular has been seen to objectively be acting against the best interest of the DAO with intent. But there are probably I can give you a concrete example of how that gets tricky in practice with respect to the interaction between workstream leaders and the community. And that is with the recent collective decision to impose austerity measures. The recent collective decision to impose austerity measures. Right? And so this is a decision that directly impacted the strategic decision, the strategic direction of the DAO and its operational capacity. There were other strategies on the table. Now, I'm not saying I would have voted in favor of any of them, but that is not the only decision that we could have made, and maybe that's not the only decision that the DAO could have made rationally in response to the current financial situation of the DAO. However, the community had zero input on whether or not that was the decision that we were to take as an organization. Now, our operational capacity is significantly limited in comparison to what it was previously. A number of workstream contributors have been let go. And what do you do? Let's say that the community does wholeheartedly disagree with this decision. What is the community to do? Remove all of the workstream leaders who impose budget cuts?
They certainly could. And I
is that
don't, to be
practical?
clear, I don't agree that there was any sort of collective decision. I really don't. I saw a number of workstream leaders make decisions on their own individual workstream. I didn't see any workstream leader somehow mandate to each other that they must.
No. That's not what I'm.
Hey guys, I'm gonna hop in here. We've had this call going for almost 50 minutes beyond what we were slated to. I feel like we had some really great discussions around specifically the topic we came here to, and I feel like we've kind of meandered a little bit into the weeds of some other things that I feel like this conversation might be best to kind of bubble up again through forum posts around the specifics or maybe another call that hasn't been going on as long as we've had this one. So,
oh my poor fingers! You're gonna make me get back in the forum.
I mean, yeah, I understand timeline, Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put a pin in it here for now, guys, and just say that I appreciate everyone for contributing to this conversation the way we have. It sounds like there might be some future conversations to have here, as well as maybe some action items for clarity around the forum posts that we've got going on right now. If we need to schedule another deeper AMA on some of the specifics, let's get coordination around that, maybe started in a forum post, and we can work with the mod squad to get a future call on the books. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank everybody for participating. I think it was a really productive conversation. I'm glad it remained, calm and civil. Not that I expected it to deviate from that, but forums have gotten real spicy in the last couple of weeks. But no, I thought this was great, and I've got some action items to carry away from this, so we'll get started on right away.
Yeah,
Totally
everyone.
agree, and appreciate everyone sharing their perspectives. Never expect them all to be the same or for everyone to agree, but it was a really great discussion. And Pasta, I do appreciate the work you're doing on the forum to bring up some of these points and clarify some of these things via governance.
Thank you.
Big GM all. We'll see you all on the next call.
GM.
Yeah. GM.
Thanks all.